What's more classic than apple pie? Apple pie can be done in so many different ways. The recipe dates back to the 17th and 18th centuries by the British, Dutch, and Swedish. As early settlers in America, they brought their pie recipes, and apple pie was one of them. Like I said, apple pie can be done in so many different ways. It's usually double crusted at the top and bottom and can be served with whipped cream, ice cream, and even cheddar cheese. I'm not judging, I've never tried it, but it's a real thing. I love apple pie. So today I'm taking all the stress out of baking and making a apple pie tart with bourbon vanilla ice cream. Sounds complicated, but trust me, I'm gonna make it super simple for y'all. I'm Natalie with Grillslingers. Let's hang out in my kitchen and we'll get started on this recipe. I'm gonna start by making the bourbon vanilla ice cream and cutting one vanilla pod in half, placing that into a bowl, and taking 2 cups of heavy whipping cream and placing it together. I'm gonna let this steep for about 15 minutes. Next, I'll be working on the sweet mixture, and I have 14 ounces of sweetened condensed milk, and I'll be using Buffalo Trace for my bourbon flavor. I've set aside 3 tablespoons of bourbon, and I'm going to mix this all together in a small bowl. Now that the 15 minutes are up, you can remove the pod from the whipping cream. You're going to start by holding one end of the pod and use the back of the knife to scrape the seeds out. Because we soaked the pod earlier, it's easy to get all the seeds out. Next, we're going to be working with the whipping cream, and we're going to mix this on medium-high speed until you start to see peaks form. This is going to take about 4 minutes. We want to keep a close eye on it because it can overmix if you leave it too long, and we'll just end up with consistency of butter, and we don't want that. Our whipping cream is ready to go, and so now we're going to fold in the sweetened condensed milk into the whipping cream. Now that everything's mixed in together, we're going to pour this into a large container that preferably has a lid. But if you don't have a lid, saran wrap or foil works as well. We just want it covered. We'll be placing the container in the freezer for about 8 hours. I did mine overnight, and that works really well. So we'll be checking back on the ice cream tomorrow morning. Now we're going to start working on the dough. I'm going to start with half a cup of unsalted butter, and I'm going to be cutting this into small cubes and placing it in the freezer while I measure all the other ingredients. I want the butter to be really cold, but just make sure it doesn't freeze. While doing this, don't forget to set the oven to preheat at 425. That way, once you're done mixing the dough, it's ready to go in the oven. I have 1 1/4 cup of flour, half a teaspoon of sugar, and 1/4 teaspoon of salt. And then I'm just going to start to mix this together. I'm taking the butter out of the freezer and placing it into my dry ingredients. And with 2 butter knives, I'll be mixing the ingredients in a cutting motion. You'll start to notice that the dough is going to get crumbly, and you can add the 1/4 cup of ice water. Now that the water's all in, I'm mixing the dough and the water together. Once this is done, I can take it out of the bowl. Be sure to generously flour your work surface before you take the dough out of the bowl. I'll begin kneading lightly until the dough comes together. It's going to get messy, but eventually it'll come together. And just remember, flour is your best friend here. Keep it close by. It's going to help with the stickiness. I'm going to start forming the dough into a small rectangle and rolling it out. Just be sure to flour the rolling pin before you start doing this. I'm going to roll the dough until it's reached about 1/8 of an inch thickness, approximately about the height of 2 stacked quarters. I'm not gonna always have a perfect rectangle, but that's okay. I don't wanna overwork the dough. And at the end of the day, it doesn't really matter since we're gonna cut these out into circles anyways. Next, I'll need my baking mat and baking sheet. If you don't have a baking mat, you can spray your baking sheet with cooking spray and that works as well. Before you put it in the oven, you can also use an egg wash. This will just give you more color and a crispier texture. And now this is all set to go in the oven. Now we're gonna work on my favorite part, the caramel apples. We have 3 Honeycrisp apples, 3 tablespoons of water, 2 tablespoons of lemon juice, 1 tablespoon of cinnamon, half a teaspoon of nutmeg, 4 tablespoons of cornstarch, half a cup of brown sugar, and a pinch of Chinese 5-spice. These apples have been washed so I can begin peeling the skins and then I'll dice them. I've placed my diced apples in a medium bowl and we're going to add 2 tablespoons of lemon juice. Just give it a couple stirs to ensure all the apples are coated with the lemon juice. In a medium-sized pot, I'm going to take 3 tablespoons of water and the diced apples and cook them for about 8 minutes over medium-high heat. The water is just really so the apples don't burn. You'll have more liquid incorporated as the apples cook down. The apples have been cooking for about 8 minutes, and so now we're going to add the brown sugar, the cinnamon, nutmeg, and cornstarch. And lastly, the pinch of Chinese 5-spice. Now that we have all the ingredients together in the pot, we're going to actively stir for about 2 minutes, and the juice of the apples and all the dry ingredients are going to form our lovely caramel sauce. I'm checking for the texture of the apples. They should be soft. That's how I know they're ready to pull. My pie dough has cooled down now, and so I'll begin cutting my pie tarts. I'll be using a 3.5-inch round pastry cutter. The dough is usually enough to make about 5 to 6 tarts. And if you don't have a pastry cutter, that's fine. You can use a knife and cut it into squares, and that works as well. I have leftover pastry that I'm going to crumble and use as a topping. I'm going to be using a smaller pastry cutter to help keep everything together. As I put the apples in, I don't want everything to overflow. Next, I'm going to take a generous scoop of bourbon vanilla ice cream and place it on top. It looks messy, but it'll be worth it. And now the final touch, we have our pie crumbs, our flaky pie crust, our warm apples, and our sweet, melty ice cream. Doesn't that look delicious? Doesn't this look amazing? And it was just as easy as I promised. You didn't have to deal with any pie complications like a soggy crust or a runny filling. I know it may seem like there was a lot of steps, but the beauty of it is that you can break it up and you don't have to do everything all at once. I mean, I started the ice cream the night before, and you can do the pie crust and the apple filling the day of, but you can break it up, and that's what makes it nice and easy. I'm gonna stop talking and I'm gonna just taste it. I'm gonna dig in, finally. I'm gonna get a little bit of everything. You taste the cinnamon, the brown sugar, and that's what you're looking for in apple pie. And then the apples and the bourbon in the ice cream complement each other really well. And so the next time you're in a mood for apple pie, try this recipe out. Don't settle for stale store-bought pie. Thanks for hanging out with me. And if you wanna join our Grillslingers community and see more recipes like this one, be sure to subscribe and hit that notification bell. And if you follow this recipe and post it on social media, be sure to tag us. I'd like to see what you're doing. Until next time, bye.